check out the old YouTubes, make sure we're live before we really take off out of the station here. And we got good audio, got good video. Seems like we're fine. Although this is not that. It is that. Sometimes I forget to update the name of the actual session. But Chris Courtney here, NewPragmatic's feedback loop. We've got some student work in. We haven't done this in a little while, mainly because there's been a lot of, frankly, student work that's been written in nature. So today it's good to get a look at some student work that is more visual. As you know, design is not always pixels. It's more often content, and today is the formulation of some content. So we're gonna dive in and take a look at some work that Heather's doing and that Shane's doing, and hopefully you if you're following along, maybe you're not Heather or Shane, and you're taking a peek at this, you'll get some ideas of really how to step into projects like this. Shane, he's reworking his portfolio, and Heather's really starting a new design. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get this started. First of all, I want to make sure that, yeah, I can actually tell which direction I'm going. All right, so let's go ahead and start here with Shane. And actually, you know, Shane also had, well, let's get out of the Discord. Thank you. I appreciate that, Discord, but I'm really looking for Firefox. Oh, there it is. Shane's also working on his portfolio at the same time. And Shane, you had an interesting thing that you brought up in your journal. This bounce that you mentioned occurring. As you hover over, you'll see this bounce is happening, and I believe that's because there is in the hover state, there is a measurement missing, and it could go right back to the way that this is constructed, but you have to, if your hover state involves space in some way, it has to be present in the standard version of the non-active or hovered version of that asset has to also have that space, and I think that's what's happening here. You can also see that it's occurring. If we inspect element, it's occurring to the design itself is getting pushed around. So I believe that this is just a reflection of that additional space not being present before you hover. So if that was present before you hover, and I realize that you're going to have to do some reorganization of the content, because maybe where you've put that padding is going to play a role. So just coming in here and taking a look. So here's your nav, and you've got that. So that LI is there. If we come in and turn on the hover, yeah, it can't see exactly where it's adding. This is where probably just jumping into your code would make a lot of sense. But I would look at okay, is that hover state, or is that spacing that I'm needing, is that present before I go in and make my moves? And looks like these two are overlapping each other. If I just kind of give this a height, and I'm just, I'm going to say 10 vertical height. That's pretty large. Yeah, See, now it doesn't bounce because I've I just came in here and broadly accounted for the space. I don't think you want 10 vertical height on this, but it takes care of it right away. So if enough space exists, then you can add this, however you want this to look, you can add that around the hover, and it will work fine. You'll get rid of the bounce. So that said, let's get over here to your presentation deck. And there's a few things to remember about presentation decks. One, this is meant to act as a guide, and they're typically intended to not exist alone. Like if I was gonna have a presentation deck for a project, I wouldn't expect it to stand on its own without me being present with it. If I was wanting it to stand on its own, I wouldn't put it together as a presentation. I would put it together as more of a report. It's going to have a lot more content. And when I say content, I'm talking about all the written parts are going to have to be present because I'm not there to say them. Here, we got to think about, all right, so if I'm standing in front of this thing, what are people seeing? Or if my face is over the screen, what are people really seeing here? This walks us through the problem. This introduces the concept of the product. I do think that I would like to see the product a little larger. I'm getting a lot of backstory here that isn't necessarily needed. I'd probably say enter new line hello neighbor, and then maybe just this little bit here, and this is all the stuff that you talk to. And then I would probably just show one of these screens larger so we can actually see it. The challenge, I think, you've got to really simplify this one. There's just a lot going on. You're going to feel the pull to talk to all of this, and I don't think you really can. I don't think you're going to have time. It's going to drag. Like if you try to address each of these things, it's going to drag. So if you want to talk about the challenges and then talk about kind of the overall implications, I think that would be fine. Process. Okay, so this is the process doc, and I think that this is just talking about the steps that you took, which is fine. I do think it's really important to bring out. I mean, I'm not sure if this is James and this is Robert, but if it is, that's great. I would really encourage you to find a way to maybe push the fact that Hello Neighbor was for an actual company. It's not like a student project. So I would push James and maybe Robert a little harder. Just so people saw that these are real people and this is what their quotes were. Now the question I have is, was there anything, these are quotes from them about Hello Neighbor. Was there anything they said about you? And if there is, I need to make sure that I see them again talking about you. Too much content here. I would go even higher level, and I realize it's like, well, Chris, how much higher level can I go? I feel like I'm taking the case study and boiling it down to 2 or 3 things. Yes, but it is a presentation, and if people say what you're wanting to have ultimately is a conversation with them. You're wanting to elicit them to ask questions. What you hope for is that you can steer them toward the questions to ask. That way you have a really good handle on, hey, I know what the answer to that is. I'm going to keep that in my hip pocket, and then I'm going to invite that conversation, and I'm going to look really smart when they ask that question because I've got an answer for it. User surveys. I'm just trying to get a sense of Okay, so here, so stakeholder interviews, findings, user surveys, user interviews. So I would probably not encourage you to go into a blow by blow of the methods that I used. I think you could zoom out and say, instead of user surveys, user interviews, and competitive analysis, and then whatever else you've got coming, you could just say research. And I would come back to this. Here, my discovery process. So if you wanted to, kick off discovery process, and this starts with the interview and the findings, and I think I would boil the other methods down. I don't think that you have to do a blow by blow for each of these. So that's the long story, the short version of the long story. Information architecture, I think that's a slide. Visual design and testing, that might be a couple of slides, mainly because you want to be able to show your design work large enough, and that may encourage you to do a couple of slides. But the big takeaway here is I'm asking you to simplify what you're putting in. Right now, it's just this is just too much content. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's very clean. It's very it feels like it is intended to be a presentation, but I think you're getting a little bitsy here, and when you simplify things down, you're going to find that this is going to flow a lot faster. And at the end of the day, when I get into doing presentations, I'm not trying to keep a presentation, any singular presentation, going for more than 5 minutes. They're going to check out if you do. All right? And what I would say though is that if you want to have some epilogue sort of slides ready to go, to where you take your user stories slide, if you want to go deeper, and you have that you have that in the backup, so that if they ask a question, you can go, oh yeah, I got a slide on that, and you go to that. Okay, but this is your main presentation, and I think your main presentation wants to be tight, wants to introduce them to the project, and then you steer and basically go hand to hand with them after that. All right. Okay, so Heather's also here, and one thing I wanted to mention here, Heather, I know that you're already kind of drilling down on the exercise, and I see that it looks like you may have, there's something going on here. I'm hopeful that you're not drawing this. Yeah, okay, so that must be from Logo Pajamas. I wasn't sure if there was a keyboard at it or not. But we're gonna not look at those, because I know that you specifically sent over these sketches, and I think that a couple things to keep in mind here on your sketches, as I get rid of the sides here, is that I think your search bar is fine. If this is the top, and you've triggered your keyboard and whatnot, and you type this out, you wouldn't get this nav here, this Eat Books Gifts pod, whatever. This would exist up here in this hamburger. It wouldn't really present itself in the search for chicken. Although now I see what you're doing. You're saying, okay, I've searched chicken, and I'm showing you results for eat, and then if you kick over to here, it's books. If you kick over here, it's gift. If you kick over here, it's pod. I get what you're doing there. I don't necessarily think that you have to. You could also segment this differently. You could say, recipes, scroll down, another header. Like there's different ways that you could present that information. You could also present this in list view. but I don't necessarily think that putting bringing the nav back into it is necessary, especially, what happens if I have more than 4? What happens if I click through and these 3 are empty? Is that a good usage of the space? Now over here, this is where you've clicked on, I guess, broccoli chicken divan, and now you have this nav plus that plus the breadcrumbs. My suggestion would be, at this point, you've already entered. You don't need the search. You don't need the Eat Books Gifts podcast. Breadcrumbs, maybe. Okay. But keep in mind that you should have a back button present somewhere. And if this is looking like Android, the way this is setting up, and Android back button, isn't, this could be okay. So I'm using the browser back button. If it's intended to be like an app, you want to make sure that the back button exists up here, but that's where the leaf is right now. But you definitely don't need the chicken search bar displayed here. The question then becomes, okay, well, how did the chicken search bar get triggered? Like, how did this happen? My suggestion would be you either have a search icon here next to your hamburger, or it's something that is triggered out of the hamburger. Like, you open this up, it gives you options, and search is one of them. And then when you hit search, you get a view that looks like this. So the question is always, okay, how did I get to here, and where am I going after here? I think that this is fine for what it is. You search chicken. You can keep the search results here. I personally wouldn't bring that nav into this. I would just list the results for that word. And then if there was any sort of organization based on the type of thing it was, I could list that. And then here, once I've clicked into one of these, all of this goes away. And then if I want that, if I want that breadcrumb, I think the way you've got it is correct in that I got 2 chicken entrees. It is part of the Eat. It's in a folder called Eat, which is inside of the home. So you can drill directly down. You're just trying to organize by level of how things are nested inside of one another. You're not trying to do anything beyond that. So I hope that helps. I think that there are, again, there are a few adjustments. I would think about, okay, so how did I get search to trigger? What did I hit? Because it shouldn't be up there all the time, taking up, a good quarter of the space at the top of the app. Now, there are instances where, we look at search, and a lot of times search is something that you pull down. If you're like in a list view, but that's not really how these apps work. If I had a home page, I wouldn't have search just permanently displayed all the way across the top. I'd probably have it in an icon, and then I trigger it, and then it comes up. So think about like how are we getting to here, and then when you get over here, like how does this really display? Because you don't need all of this stuff. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Feedback Loop. I thank Shane and Heather for submitting work today. If you have work that you'd like to have reviewed, jump on into the Discord channel or go to newpragmatic.com/mentorship and learn about joining the program. All right, I'm Chris Courtney for NewPragmatic. Have a great rest of your day. See ya.